On this episode of Crime Chronicles, we take you to a case in Dallas, Texas. Happened several years ago. An off-duty police officer named Amber Guyger shot and killed a man named Botham Jean in his own apartment because apparently she thought she was in her apartment. We have some news footage of that event, and we also speak to a community activist in Dallas who played a key role in the public exposure of this case. So stay tuned for the Crime Chronicles episode devoted to the murder of Botham Jean.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. Now to a story that made national headlines when a white Dallas police officer shot and killed a black man after she accidentally went into his apartment thinking that it was hers. Amber Guyger shot Botham Jean to death in September of 2018, sparking protests around the city.
Now, after serving only part of her 10-year sentence, she's eligible for parole. She served 5 of the years. Ironically, this comes on would have been Botham Jean's 33rd birthday. During her trial, she testified about what happened, saying she was scared and she thought he was going to kill her.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, please.
When you pulled your weapon at night and you fired, why did you fire?
I was scared. Whoever was inside my apartment was gonna kill me. And I'm sorry. I have to live with that every single day that I heard. No police officer ever would want to hurt an innocent person.
I have my gun pointed, and I'm saying, let me see your hands, let me see your hands.
What were you focused on?
Him.
What did the figure do after you said, let me see your hands?
He started coming towards me.
I feel like a terrible person. I feel like a piece of crap. I hate it. I hate that I have to live with this every single day of my life. And I ask God for forgiveness. And I hate myself every single day. I wish he was the one with the gun that killed me. I never wanted to take an innocent person's life.
When you aimed and pulled the trigger at Mr. Jean, shooting him in center mass exactly where you are trained, you intended to kill Mr. Jean.
I didn't.
Why would you try and do a little CPR on a man who's dying who needs your full attention?
Because I had to keep getting up to see where I was at.
That was more important than giving life-saving help to this man.
I had no idea where I was at.
You were able to tell the 911 call taker very, very soon on that you were in apartment 1478. After that moment, why couldn't you have given him full, undivided, and proper attention?
I was still on the phone with...
You can put the phone on speakerphone, ma'am.
I had so much stuff racing through my head.
Can you imagine Mr. Jean's perspective, an intruder barging into his apartment, somebody on the other side of that door being you, going in with the purpose of finding the threat and taking care of it, and then having been shot and fallen and being alone in that apartment? Can't you imagine that being a little bit scarier than you just being alone at the moment?
Yes, sir, I can.
Mr. Jean is lying on a stretcher being carried by paramedics, right?
Yes, sir.
You can see what you've done. The second he's passed, what do you go do again?
I looked at my phone because I didn't want to see his body.
This family is thinking about having to bury their son and their brother. 2 days after the event, you are already going back to talking about getting drunk and doing sexual things with Martin Rivera.
Yes, I did.
What was he doing when you fired the shot?
He was just moving, advanced towards me whenever I shot the first 2 shots where he ended up falling down.
And why did you shoot?
Because I was scared that he was going to come at me and kill me.
That was your reason?
Yes, sir. I was scared, and I thought he was advancing towards me. He had a weapon.
Well, Guyger was eventually found guilty of murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Well, one of the people who may have some interesting insights into this case is Mr. Ray Jordan, who you see right here. We're coming from Dallas, Texas, deep in the heart of Texas. So Ray, tell us who you are to begin with and kind of how we got here.
Absolutely. My name is Reverend Ray Jordan. I have been in the city of Dallas since 2005, so 19 years now. I pastor a church here in the city. I've taught in higher ed in the city since 2008, mostly teaching classes in civil and human rights, which lends me to be involved in community organizing and activism.
Now, when this murder happened, you were not in Dallas, correct? Where were you?
I was, of course, living here, but I was not in the city at the time. I was in Washington State leading a men's group that weekend on an island off the coast of Seattle. And when I returned to mainland and my phone got reception, I was bombarded with calls. I thought it was something happening at my church locally that I was getting so many phone calls and messages. But in fact, it was persons from the city reaching out to me, asking me, had I heard of the murder of Botham Jean?
Now, why did they contact you? I mean, I know people were talking about it, I know, but why you? What was your kind of special role here, if you will?
Absolutely. I've been involved in community organizing and activism in the city for a number of years. I was leading the clergy table of a group called Faith in Texas at the time. Faith in Texas is a multiracial, multi-faith organization of people of faith getting together, talking about community issues, working towards issues of equity, inclusion, etc. So part of my work with that organization put me on the radar of a lot of people. And of course, it was 2 years prior that our city had been paralyzed with the murder of police officers. In the July 2016, there was a Black Lives Matter march through the city of Dallas downtown, and a random person targeted police officers and killed, I believe, 5 police officers. So our city was still healing in a lot of ways from that event, and here we are back in the headlines.
Well, yeah, and Dallas has, and I don't really blame Dallas for this, but it also has some unfortunate histories with other violent events. Of course, we know that they went back in 1963.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think our city tends to be more sensitive to being in the headlines when it comes to violence, particularly gun violence. And it took a long time for the city to heal from 1963.
Right.
So anytime the scab is attempted to be torn again, it puts us all a bit on edge.
Well, okay. So, what from your point of view, your perspective, what do you think the impact of this murder of Botham Jean was? What was the mood of the city, if you will, or the people in your circle that you talk to and deal with?
Absolutely. So, upon the advent of his murder and the word getting out, people were angry because it didn't make sense. Lots of violence doesn't make sense. We understand that.
But this one.
But the more we understand,
I'll disagree in a tongue-in-cheek way.
Yeah.
I'll say that some violence does make sense. It doesn't make it right, but it makes sense.
Right.
This one really does not make sense.
You're absolutely right. Crimes of passion. You think, okay, I see
Right.
how that happened.
Yeah, or a fight over money.
Fight over money. I was
Yeah.
going to say finances, but a young person. He's 26 years old. He's an immigrant.
From St. Lucia.
From St. Lucia. He's
Yeah.
a Caribbean immigrant. He's a devout Christian. He's a very strong member of his local Church of Christ congregation.
Went to a Christian school in
Went to a
Arkansas
Christian
for his
school,
university, right?
And I know Harding University. I grew up in Arkansas, so I felt like I spent a summer there in a youth camp when I was in high school. So I felt like I had a connection to him. And he is like a lot of young people who have moved from a smaller town or city, moved to the big city for his career. He is me. In 2005, I was 26 years old. I came to the city to finish my grad degree, to advance my career. He is me a few years ago. He's 26, he's coming to the city, he's an accountant, he's working for an accounting firm, he's building his career. No one has a bad thing to say about him. He's minding his own business in his own apartment, his home, and he's murdered.
Now, I don't want to indict the entire Dallas Police Department when I say this, but initially, The woman who did this was charged with manslaughter.
Mhm.
Were there any thoughts or reactions to that? Because the charge is upgraded to murder eventually.
Absolutely. And I would dare say, if it had not been for community involvement and the pressure the community put on the DA's office, I don't know that we would have seen that charge upgraded. This is, like it or love it, when the community is involved, when the community is connected to an injustice, it gets a bigger spotlight. The scrutiny becomes much more cautious and by the book. And you actually can see, knock on wood, if things work the way the system is supposed to work, then you should see some accountability for the crime committed. I remember coming to my congregation. It was one of the few times that I had members, predominantly white congregation in Preston Hollow, an affluent part of town. It's where I was pastoring at the time. And I had some pushback because I spoke about it from the pulpit. And I had persons, well-intending, well-meaning people say to me, well, Ray, shouldn't we just let the system do its thing? Shouldn't we just let it play out? And as someone who is a member of an historically marginalized group, I know the system doesn't always work the same for every individual. So without community pressure and the spotlight that puts on the powers that be, sometimes the system doesn't work.
Well, I didn't know this until we were talking before we did this, and you mentioned this to me, that this is why I said I don't want to indict the entire Dallas Police Department, but there are probably some people in the hierarchy that knew about this. The initial reports that came out of this was, oh, this guy was smoking marijuana in his apartment.
Mm-hmm. So, and in fact, I got in trouble in that sermon, that infamous sermon I'm talking about, because I referenced what is happening to Botham Jean is what happens often when these things occur, is that there's a camaraderie, a fraternity, a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a good old boys system, however you want to term it, that surrounds that wall of blue. And it's often hard to bring law enforcement to accountability when a mistake is made. And clearly, even to her own account, this is a horrible, tragic mistake. But there's still a life has been taken. And someone who's been trained in law enforcement ought to have known better in many different ways. As you look at the timeline, like she should have known better. In this instance, she should have known better. This should have raised questions. So there has to be some accountability. Yeah. When you give someone a firearm and you entrust them with public safety, they have to be held accountable. And so, yes, they were blaming the victim, trying to ease, I guess, the accountability of that officer, trying to somehow avert accountability by saying he was some marijuana found in his apartment. But even if that is an illegal act, it's not punishable by execution.
Right. Well, I think when we first sat down here, Ray, you asked me, I believe you made reference to the Grassy Knoll area. Anyway, a street that runs through Dallas that has undergone a name change. So talk about that, if you will.
Absolutely. So after, again, community involvement, community being engaged, it's how democracy works. Because the community was engaged, because even though he was an immigrant, he was not from Dallas originally, he became Dallas's. The community really wrapped their arms around that family. There was a foundation named in his honor that still has a big gala in town every year. His family comes from St. Lucia to attend that.
Now, tell us about the foundation, what goes on there.
And it's, of course, his legacy, and it's also to provide resources for community blight and equities, and some trainings and understanding around law enforcement and community engagement. But because of that foundation and because of the community support, the street that is in front of now the Dallas PD headquarters, which is also the street that runs in front of the apartment building where he was murdered, is named for him. It is now Botham Jean Boulevard.
I mean, a 26-year-old man, his life is taken needlessly. So it's hard to ask this question. But did any good come from that? Not only the event itself, but the aftermath, in your opinion? Not worth what happened. I'm not
certainly.
Is there any silver lining there?
Only silver lining was that we, the community, felt that justice had been served. As you referenced earlier, the charge was upgraded to murder. She lost her appeal to overturn her conviction.
Right.
And it felt like this time, accountability was provided, justice has been served. Outside of that, we see just 2 years post Botham Jean, the murder of George Floyd. I am actually suing the city of Dallas, the county of Dallas, and the state of Texas in federal court because of police brutality to activists, marchers, protesters in the aftermath of George Floyd. So, have things changed since Botham Jean? Not that I can see. But for he and his family, I'm happy justice was served.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Crime Chronicles. As we delve into the darker side of human nature, we invite you to join us on our journey by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Your support helps make possible our inquiry into the sometimes unsettling but always fascinating phenomenon known as crime and justice. So hit that like and subscribe button right now and don't miss future episodes. Till then, Mark Jones, hoping you will join our Crime Chronicles community. And thanks for tuning in.